Hey friends, Steve Brown here, and you are in my home studio, which we're going to be doing a grand tour with my good friend Terrie Carr on the Carr Stereo Podcast. Come on, let's go. Action.
Action. Action indeed. The Carr Stereo Podcast is live on location, which is so nice for me to not be Zooming with someone. And I'm with my buddy, Steve Brown, Trixter Steve Brown. He's like my brother, my Jersey rock and roll brother, as we are touring Jersey studios, which is so cool for me as a music fan, because I get to see everything that's going on around me. This place, Steve, is pretty magical. This is where the magic happens. Correct?
That's right. Lots of rock and roll magic and memories for sure.
Yeah, if these walls could talk, we've got to tell a few stories about some of the photos on these walls, because I know that there are definitely stories behind them. But first of all, thanks for letting me come in and set up and letting us podcast here today. It's pretty incredible. This behind us is wow. Wowza, wowza, wowza. Now, you have your own brand of guitar, correct?
Yes, I do.
Which one is?
This is one of them, the SBS guitars.
That is snazzy.
Which was launched in July of 2023, and we are a few years in business, and we've sold a lot of guitars, and these are incredible, like Van Halen style, 80s inspired guitars. This one, especially this color. But what the cool thing is that my partner in Guitar Fetish, which is a company in Florida, we make these guitars super affordable. So this guitar you're looking at, it's $359.
Wow.
And that was always my dream, to be able to, I never understood why certain guitars were so expensive. And then I would get a cheap guitar and go, wow, this guitar is really good. And so we've done that, and it's a dream come true, and lots of new models. We have a whole new line coming out in a couple weeks. So just, again, this is how do I say it all the time? Dreams come true every day for me in this crazy rock and roll world that we live in.
You're the king of reinvention.
And this is it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for
Which
that.
I find to be very inspiring. And you know what happened during COVID? Which was one of the good things that happened. People started noodling on guitars. Guitar sales went like...
Yeah, sadly, I didn't have my company then, so we missed all that, but that's okay.
But this is perfect because everybody's got that passion now. If you're looking for a new guitar, affordable guitars, amazing. Well, this is what I love about you, and you and me have talked about this. We've talked about reinvention.
For sure.
And you said, you know what? Anytime I felt like I was kind of moving out of the music business, I always figured out a way to get back in. This is my passion. This is what I do. This is what I love. So you have turned yourself into more than just the guy that was in a successful band in the 1980s. You're a writer. You're a producer. You work with other artists. You've got your guitar company. And of course, you have sort of resurrected the band that has so many fans, and that is Trixter. And you and PJ are going out. We've got some new music coming. We're going to talk about that. How and why was reinvention so important to you? And when did you decide, you know what, I'm taking it from here to here?
Well, I think, thank you for all those kind words. Wow. It's, I'm actually sort of impressed with myself here. Getting back to it, it all started back in 1978. And there were two bands and two guitar players who completely changed my life forever. It was Kiss and Van Halen, and Ed Van Halen and Ace Frehley, who made me want to play guitar. And I became obsessed with all things rock and roll. It wasn't just playing the music. When I was a kid, and I've told this story, and I think we talked about it on the interview, I knew, and I told this story to Ace, and I told this story to Ed Van Halen as well. I said, dude, I knew who their booking agent was. I knew who their trucking company was. I would read, and we grew up in that age where the vinyl record was our Bible, if you will. It was our textbook. We would get the record. It was a religious experience. You'd put on the record, and you would listen to it. You'd read all the words. You'd read this. You'd sign up, of course, for the Kiss Army or the Van Halen fan club. But I became obsessed with all that. And 40 plus years later, that obsession is still there, to where I still get, whether it's doing an interview like today, all the lights and all the stuff we're hooked up to. I love all this. And that passion has never left me. And I think that's how I've survived. And The other thing is that I still believe that the first 50 years of my life in this business and doing this was just a warm-up. I still think the greatest stuff is ahead of me. And I tell PJ that all the time.
Yeah.
I said, dude, it was funny because with Trixter, I always said, man, when PJ turns, because PJ's 2 years younger than me, and I always said, when PJ turns 50, I know we're getting old. Because he was 13 years old when I met him.
Wow, I didn't realize you guys, I thought you were in the same graduating class.
No, he's 2 years. We were all the Trixter guys, we were 2 years apart.
Ah.
But PJ was, obviously the youngest. And, he was so lucky he got to skip out of his senior year in high school because we were making the first Trixter record.
Wow.
So he got like they made you're going to California for a couple months to make a record? It's going to be like a long gym class. So I think he had to take some sort of test or something. But the long and short of it is that I never lost the passion for the business because I loved all of it and the game of it. And whether it's coming down every day, I come down to my studio and I go over there and I make music, whether I have to write something or I'm working on somebody else's record. I'm working on the new Femme Fatale record right now, and all different projects that I do. And it's every day. You remember, I used to do jingles for the radio station.
Yeah,
and recorded right here. Hey, Dover Dodge, still one of my greatest jingles ever.
Absolutely.
Dover Dodge.
That's right.
But the key of it all, and I think you're the same way, and I think it's a Jersey thing, when you're in a business that you love, even with all the BS and all the bullshit that's involved and the bad things that have happened to both of us, that we're survivors, but there's a love for what we do. And for me, there's nothing greater than being in the rock and roll world. So here we are, and this is my, this is my sort of my little showcase.
The place where the magic happens.
Yeah, this is it.
I love it.
The Mojo Vegas 6160
so
recording
we have a cool
studio.
story. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that, because you mentioned two heroes, Ace Frehley and Eddie Van Halen. I mean, two of my heroes as well. I literally thought I was going to marry Eddie Van Halen. I mean, I think all the girls did. We all did. I told Valerie Bertinelli that once in an interview too, and she got a kick out of that because we all loved Eddie.
Yeah.
But But you managed to forge relationships with these two guys who inspired you, who you got advice from. Let's talk a little bit about that relationship that you had with Eddie. When was the first time you met Eddie Van Halen, and were you like absolutely jaw to the ground?
I met Ed in January of 1991, and it was the cool thing about it, Tara, was Trixter at that point we were riding high on the success. Give It To Me Good was a big hit. The record was, rounding third base to go gold. We just released One in a Million. We were number one on MTV. I was out at the NAMM show in LA, and his guitar tech at the time, this guy Matt Bruck, who still works for Wolfgang, we had met the night before at a Spinal Tap show, which is really crazy. The original Spinal Tap played at this Marshall party, and he goes, "Hey man, tomorrow I'm doing something. Yeah, I think you want to be there." So he said, "Meet me at this hotel at blah blah blah." So I ran over, and he goes, "Come on, I'm taking you in." Ed Van Halen's doing a thing for Ernie Ball Guitars with Steve Morse and Albert Lee.
Wow!
And so I got to go to this thing and go to sound check. And I'm standing there, and Ed wasn't there yet. And all of a sudden, he walks in, and he has this big baggy shirt on. He's got glasses on, and he just walks over to everybody. And I remember seeing him going, "Whoa, there he is." And I'd seen him before. I've been to concerts. I actually, in 1988, I jumped up on stage with Van Halen when they played the Garden and played Eddie's guitar. So I was closer to him than most people think. And I've showed you that footage. Right?
Yeah.
So long story short, Ed comes in, and what I thought was so cool, and this is anybody who's met him and knows what a nice guy is. Him and Al are just sweethearts. And he walked over to everybody who was working there, shook their hand, and he said to everybody, he goes like this, he goes, "Hi, I'm Ed." And it was I was like, that guy is the coolest dude in the world. He didn't come in with any attitude. And, as time went on, that was always something I looked at to how to treat people.
Yeah.
Especially treat people who were working, work the sound, work the lights, who were the roadies. I just thought it was so cool. And then he came over, and I was hanging out with Matt. And he goes, hey, who's this? You know, and Matt goes, hey, this is Steve from the band Trixter. He's, you know, taken off and he's only 20 years old. And he goes, oh man, you beat me to the punch. And he goes, I was 23 when our record came out. And he goes, and he sat there and he did that typical Eddie Van Halen thing that he always does. He kind of was thinking, and he goes, Trixter. He goes, who are you guys going on tour with? And I go, I'm going on tour with the Scorpions. He goes, that's it. I just heard a commercial. You're playing like Irvine Meadows. And it was like, I was sitting there, you know, I had to refrain myself, like, from going like, holy shit, it's Eddie Van Halen. This guy, my hero 100 times over. Everything, my hair, my look, everything. I wanted to be him. I wanted to play like him. He was my biggest inspiration. You know, because Kiss they were like superheroes. They were untouchable. They weren't real. So I saw Kiss in 1979, the greatest concert, you know, on the Dynasty tour, but they were, again, it was untouchable. Van Halen, they were like real people. Even though Ed and Dave and the whole band, they were like superheroes, but they were real because you could see their faces. And I remember seeing Van Halen in 1982, and that was a moment where I said, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Fast forward to 1991, meeting the guy, and he just all of a sudden, and I think what was cool for me was at the time we were doing so well, so there was that thing where he goes, all right, he's selling records, he's in it, he's cool. So he started showing me his new amp. He had just designed the new PV 5150s, and he showed me the prototype, and he's going into all the tech stuff, because that's really what he was. He was a guitar geek. He loved, as he always used to say, chasing tone. And so he's showing me all this stuff, and I'm just sitting there going like, it's Eddie. I can't believe this is my hero. And he's the coolest guy in the world. And then afterwards, so he does sound check with Steve Morse and Albert Lee. And that's a whole nother thing, because those two guitar players I loved as well. But Eddie Van Halen's everything. And then he does sound check. And he goes, come on, we're going back to the green room. Let's have a beer. So we go back and crack a Corona. Dweezil Zapp is back there. And that was, and then he had to go do something else. But I'm just sitting there going, wow. I said, if it all, and I told this to the guys afterwards, because I saw the Trixter guys, PJ and Pete. I said, if it all ends tomorrow, I'm happy.
I'm happy.
I hung out with Eddie Van Halen.
And he inspired you.
Yes,
See, this is what I like. It was that meeting where he shook your hand, he said, hi, Ahmed. He talked to you about guitar. He talked to you about, oh yeah, this is name recognition.
Like
I heard you.
Fellow musician,
right?
You know?
Exactly, and that moved you into why this is so cool, and why I'm going to take it from here to here to here to here. So you're inspired by Eddie, and he does not disappoint. And I think your trajectory might have been different had you not really met him there that day and been able to connect with him again. There's a photo on the wall here at your studio, which is just tremendous, and I think it shows that camaraderie. Talk to me a little bit about this photo, and where was it taken?
It was taken up in Groton, Connecticut, and the great story about it was I had just bought this house. Thank you, the success of Trixter. Bought this house. And when I looked at this house, the first thing I needed to know was there's going to be a basement where I could build a studio. And so that was it. But a week later, Van Halen was playing up in Groton, Connecticut. So we went up there to see him, and I'm in the dressing room with him, and he goes, so what's going on? What's happening? I'm like, well, I just got done with 10 months of touring for, the second Trixter record. We toured with Kiss, and then we did a headlining run for 6 months. And then I bought the house, and I was telling him, so now I'm building a studio, man. I've been ripping down walls, taking all, because this wasn't a finished basement. So I had to rip down all crappy insulation. I remember that was not fun. All you house workers out there, contractors who have to do all that work, man, my hat's off to you, because that was crazy. But long story short, I told him, so I'm building a studio. And he goes, oh, what, you building a studio where you can make demos? I go, no, man, I'm building a real, recording studio so we can make records. I said, like what you have. And I told him, and I said, this was a great joke. And God, I remember it. And still one of the sweetest Ed, you know, because he always had such a great sense of humor, but he was so innocent in a lot of ways, where he was just like, oh, you're building a studio to make demos? And I go, no, man, I'm building a real studio. And I said, well, like you know, you have 5150. I said, my studio is going to be called 6160. And he goes like, I think he had a cigarette, and he goes, what does 6160 mean? I go, I have no idea, man, but it sounds cool. And he goes, oh, great. He goes, best of luck, you know? And so that was it. So that's why this studio, I call it Mojo Vegas 6160. And of course, you know, it's influenced by, because I always remember hearing when, you know, Ed built the studio, and Alex told me stories, you know, because I still talk to Alex a lot. He told me the story about like when the first time they recorded Jump, when they did that, it was basically the sticks of the studio, 2x4s, and apparently I hear that rumor has it there's actually some video of that Don Landy took.
How amazing would that be if that footage saw the light of day?
I hope so. I hope so. But that was, you know, the Van Halen brothers having 5150 and recording 1984 there. I remember hearing about that. That was always part of my dream, to have my own studio, because it was like, you know, a lot of artists, when you have other people engineering, producing, for me personally, I was always asking questions, making records, and I would never understand when an engineer would say, oh, it can't sound, why doesn't the guitar sound like this? And he'd give me a bunch of excuses why it didn't. And I go, basically I'd always say, I want you to make it sound like Van Halen. I want it to sound like Van Halen 1. And then he would go, well, you know, reason, blah, blah, blah. And of course we know, I'm not Eddie Van Halen. It's never gonna sound just like it, and the drums, like why doesn't the snare drum sound like Tommy Lee or like Alex Van Halen or like Def Leppard? And so the whole thing with having your studio, my own studio, and I guess a lot of artists who have their own studio, is that you can control it. So this was my place where I learned how to engineer, produce, become a much better writer, perform, everything, you know, and it's so important. And it's one of the biggest, people ask me for advice, like for their kids about, you know, my son's in a band. The first thing I tell everybody, all the kids, is learn how to make your own records, learn how to record, learn how to produce your own songs, learn how to make your own videos, because the more that you can control and do on your own, the better off you're going to be, because you don't have to rely on other people.
Yeah, and so you can do it as you're inspired.
Yeah, exactly.
When you get inspired, you can start to work. You're not relying on, you know, wow, I feel inspired now, and then there's going to be a 2-week time suck.
Well, that's always it.
And that doesn't come back.
And the other cool thing is that being that's in my house, usually it starts 6 o'clock in the morning. I get up early, my coffee, and I'm down here. I'm not wearing a collared shirt and blue jeans, I can tell you that. It's usually I'm in, you know, a bathrobe and pajamas, and I get to work at the studio. But that's where it, you know,
the
again,
Jersey Hefner.
you're not paying, you know, $1,000 a day for a studio. So the creativity is 24/7.
I love it. You know? I love it. So can we cruise around? Can we tour a little bit?
Let's look. Go.
The wall is incredible. Wow, I don't know where to start. So we talked about Edward.
Yeah.
There's you and Edward. Look at this. You and King Sambora.
Richie.
Two New Jersey guitar players.
And singers.
So
let me tell you this.
Great
this guy,
guitar players. You're right.
Who's one of the sweetest guys on the planet, Rich Sambora. I miss you, dude. Where you been? Call me. You still have my number. But Richie was my main inspiration after playing guitar. He was the guy, when I saw Bon Jovi open up for Rat in 1985 at the Meadowlands when they got their gold records. It was on the 7800 degrees Fahrenheit tour.
I was there.
Yeah, seeing Bon Jovi for the first time. It was a life-changing show for me for a couple reasons. But Richie, watching him play and then all of a sudden hearing how great of a singer he was, that was the moment, a definitive moment in my career that I said, I have to become a lead singer guitar player. I just can't be a background vocalist. I have to become a lead singer guitar player, like Steve Lukather, where Steve Lukather and Toto, he actually sang some of the Toto hits.
Yeah.
Richie didn't, but his voice was so big and so important, those harmonies that him and John did. And, and I told him that, I said, dude, you are the guy that made me want to become a lead singer. And now I'm the lead singer in my own band.
I love Richie's voice. I thought his solo record, Stranger in This Town,
I was in the studio with him when he was making it.
Underrated.
I'm just a stranger in this town.
Yeah, pick it up, download it. It is so great if it's still around. Amazingly underrated record. And then, of course, you've got your collection of like everything. All the bands that have inspired you, Van Halen
and the bands
Kiss.
we toured with. So Poison, this poster was, I believe, the second or third ever arena show that we did with Trixter. And this is special because and I've told you this story, when we started Trixter, we didn't care about making records, making videos, anything. All we wanted to do was play the Meadowlands Arena or play any arena. So finally, after 6 months after the first Trixter record came out, we finally got the call. You guys are going out on tour with Poison, and you're going to do your first arena shows. And this was one of the posters from that.
Wow.
So this poster, it wasn't the first show. This was the second or third. But we went out. The first show was in Muskegon, Michigan, and we crushed it. It was like 10,000 people. And for an opening band, the first time playing arena, there's a lot that can go wrong. But God was looking down on us and said, Trixter, here's your time. You guys are going to do it. And we had a flawless show.
I love it. I love it.
And here's vintage Van Halen. There's when we toured with Kiss in 1992. A very cool poster. And this is special because this is my first time back in 2014. My first gig with Def Leppard was at Wembley Stadium. Now these guys, I've known the Def Leppard guys since I was a teenager. And of course, when I took over to, when I had to fill in for Vivian Campbell, they didn't give me like a club show to warm up. They go, no, Steve, your first gig is going to be in front of 90,000 people at Wembley Stadium in the UK. So thanks, guys. I always said to them, I said, well, talk about throwing me to the lions. That's what they did, but that's a special moment.
I want to stop right over here. Wow. Ace, 10,000 volts. This seems to me like just yesterday, you guys were on my radio show. You spoke about the inspiration of Eddie Van Halen. Let's talk a little bit about the inspiration of Ace Frehley. I feel so lucky and grateful, and I really want to thank you. Because the last years of Ace's life, and who knew, you kind of brought me in. I helped get the 10,000 volts project, I think, on the air probably for the first time.
For sure.
I loved the song. I believed in the record. But most of all, we had such fun on that project with Ace when we worked together. Now, you did so much writing, producing, playing. What was it like? But let's rewind all the way back to the beginning. What did the Spaceman mean to you as a kid? And then how did you become friends with him and then ultimately become somebody that he worked with?
Well, again, 1978, it was the record Rock and Roll Over. And my sister-in-law, Marianne, her brother, Paulie, had this record. And I saw it in his room. And I went into his room. I was 8 years old at the time. And I picked it up. And he came running in. He goes, Steve, borrow this record. Take it home. Listen to it. You're going to love these guys. And I didn't know what it was. Those faces on Rock and Roll Over. I didn't know, was that a band? I didn't even know. At that point in my life, I knew Elvis was my first musical inspiration as a kid. I remember watching, when I was 3 years old, watching the Aloha from Hawaii special and seeing him in that white suit. And seeing my mom reacting to him, like that was the first thing where I knew, like even at 3 years old, I knew this was special. It's embedded in my head. I'll never forget it. And then after that, in my house, we always, my parents My dad was a principal in school. You know, the school we went to, my father was a teacher. He taught me how to live. It's the truth. And give it to me good. But every day at 5 o'clock, it would be happy hour. And they had the old, I'm sure your parents had the old big record player and 8-track player.
The Victrola.
And it was, yeah, exactly. So it was Fleetwood Mac. It was the Bee Gees.
Yeah, it was my house too.
The
Yep.
Beatles,
Yep.
all that great music. But it wasn't until hearing Kiss that completely blew my mind. And I put on Rock and Roll Over. I was up in my bedroom, and I remember dropping the needle, and it was I Want You. And I remember hearing it, the acoustic guitars, like, oh, this is kind of cool. Kind of sounds like maybe Fleetwood Mac or Rod Stewart. And then when that drum beat kicked in and those guitars, I want you, I swear to God, it was like being in a Kiss concert. My head exploded. What I was hearing completely possessed me from that moment on. And then listening to the rest of the record, Calling Dr. Love, hearing that weird Gene Simmons's voice, you need my love, baby. I was like, I didn't know what it was, but it completely took over my body and my mind and everything. And then a couple months later, kid up the street brings back this 8-track tape. He goes, Steve, I hear you're listening to Kiss now. You're going to love this band. Gene Simmons discovered them. It was Van Halen 1 on an 8-track tape. So that was the two definitive moments of my life musically that made me want to. A week later, I told my mom, I got to take guitar lessons. She took me down to Musically Yours in Maywood, New Jersey, and I started taking guitar lessons. But Kiss in general, like I said before, those guys were superheroes. You know, you see the pictures and then getting the magazines and reading Rock Scene and Circus and seeing it. And I just became obsessed. And then fast forward, I believe it was backstage at Bon Jovi's Skid Row, Meadowlands, 1988. And Ace came out and jammed with Skid Row that night. And I was in the dressing room, and I remember Snake introduced me to Ace, and that was the first time I met Ace. And I just remember, again, like Eddie Van Halen, how cool he was and how nice. Snake brings me over, hey Ace, this is Steve Brown from Trixter. He's, a big fan. And I just remember Ace looking at me, hey Steve, how you doing? Typical the Ace voice, and that was it. And then, years later, we would see each other at different music industry things, and he was always so cool. But it wasn't until 2022 that my other band, I had this band, Tokyo Motor Fist, with Ted from Danger, Chuck from Billy Joel, and Greg Smith. And we did a couple shows opening for the Ace Frehley band. We did Patchogue, Long Island, we did The Chance, and somewhere else. And a couple of guys in his organization were like, you got to write with Ace. They loved the TMF record. They were like, you and Ace would be such a great thing. And Lara, Ace's fiance at the time, she was so, she was saying, just get some ideas together, send it to me, and I'll get it to him. And so I put together a couple ideas. Walking on the Moon, which wasn't called Walking on the Moon at the time, Fighting for Life, 10,000 Volts, these ideas. Because I knew I had to give him some things. And
they were all kind of inspired by him too. So I think as an artist,
yes,
he knew that you got him.
As a fan,
as a fan, and you've come to your production and your writing as a fan. Yeah. And I think that works so well. I remember a program director telling me, never interview as a fan. And I didn't for a year. And they were the suckiest interviews I ever did. Because I think when you come to a perspective as a fan, you see deeper into the person.
Of course.
And you saw very deep into him as an artist. And I think you saw the potential. I think with somebody like Ace, and I think this is common knowledge, Ace, you're talking to him about one thing, and he's thinking about something else.
Yes.
And you kept that focus in him. So he finally decides, yeah, I'll work with you. When did you get that call, and what was that like? That was,
again, it was the song that became Walking on the Moon. I sent him the idea, and it was pretty much a lot of it was already there. And so the great story, I'm in the shower, right? And I hear my phone ring, and I always have my phone. I'm either in the shower, I'm doing my vocal warm-ups or listening to talk radio or something, and I see, and it says Paul Frehley. I go, and I sent him like 5 ideas over the course of like 3 months. He's finally calling me. I go, holy shit. So I pick up the phone. I go, hey, he goes, Steve, it's Ace. He goes, this idea is great, but we got to change the title. It's going to be called Walking on the Moon. That's going to be the title of the record. And that's how inspired he was, by hearing this rough idea.
Yeah.
We hadn't even worked together yet, but I knew that, it was fate that we were going to work together. This was my hero. And again, all the ideas that I sent him were as me being a huge Ace fan and the biggest Kiss fan. And I go, what do I want to hear? Because I believe, well, I'm like all the other Kiss fans or Ace fans, that we want, this great music that's reminiscent of what he did in the past, but something new. And that's what it did. And so I'm like, dude, I just got out of the shower, and he's just like, oh, that's great. Didn't even care. He just kept talking. And he said, when can you come over? And he was living up in Sparta, New Jersey. And so a couple days after, I finally went to his house, and we completely changed some stuff around in the song that became Walking on the Moon. And that was all Ace's idea. And that was it.
Yeah.
And it was like, and the one thing, what you were talking about with Ace, he told me, and the first day we worked together, when we got done, it was what I was telling you before about working with artists. I looked him in the eye, like I'm looking at you, and I said, Ace, if you trust me, and you listen to me, and I will listen to you, and I will trust you, I promise you, we will make the best music, the best record that we can possibly make. And the goal was, he told me that first day, he said, I want to make sure, he goes, Steve, I want to make sure every song on this record's great. And I said, well, dude, you got my word, we're going to do that. And I think we did that with 10,000 Volts.
Absolutely. I think it was a pivotal record in his career. I'm so grateful. After he passed, I said to you, I think that it was a gift that you guys had together. It was a gift that you gave him working with him. And I just kind of loved how, for those that didn't get to see behind the scenes, how Steve would always bring Ace back to kind of where Ace should be. I think 10,000 Volts, was that the first radio interview he did?
When we came
live?
to DHA, yes, it was.
He came on my radio show. It was right after the holidays.
Yep.
And that day, I've got to tell everybody, was so magical. It was just a day that was fun. Yeah. We just had fun. It's what radio should be when you've got an artist in the studio. Ace was fun. And that's the thing that I took away the most from Ace. He was, of course, just a guitar legend, but he was such a character and such a fun guy. Always amazing to interview. He kept you on your toes. If he kept me on my toes as an interviewer, what about you as a producer? Were you on your toes all the time?
Always, always. You always had to, again, and that was what was cool about it, because Ace, it's been no secret that he's very spontaneous.
Yeah.
And that first day that we worked together, I said to him, after we got done writing and recording some of Walking on the Moon, I said to him, Ace, do you want me to maybe record, because I do this a lot, I record like a guide vocal for somebody and give them like melodic ideas and phrasing ideas for the singing. I said, hey man, you want me to record like a vocal for this so you could practice? And without missing a beat, I swear to God, he looks at me and he goes like this, he goes, Steve, I don't practice. Let's get up on the mic. He went up 5 feet behind me, stood at his mic, and he goes, tell me what to sing, tell me the words. And that day, an hour and a half later, we pretty much had most of what became the final vocal and the final recording of Walking on the Moon that first day. So that was where we saw the chemistry. And it just was one song at a time. That was another thing, which he was great at. He said, I can only work on one song at a time because my mind, and that's really cool. Because for me, I'm working on 10 different things.
Yep.
So I can stop working on something. He couldn't do that. And that was great, because he was very honest with me.
Yeah.
And that, as a producer and an artist, that's, for all you artists out there, be honest with the people you're working with so they know what they're dealing with, because you're going to get a better result. And that, again, and looking back on it now, when we got done with the record, we were kind of like so relieved. And then once 10,000 Volts was released in the video and the response, it was such a great feeling. And I said to him, And not knowing this and not even thinking, and I said, well, dude, look, if we never make another record again, if you never make another record again, at least this is a perfect bookend for your career. If this was, and it turned out to be that 10,000 Volts is, and his last, full original record. And I wish it wasn't the case, but at least we accomplished something that was so magical and one of the greatest experiences of my life, to get to work with your hero. It's funny because my father was a minor league baseball player, and he got to pitch against the '57 Yankees. He played for the Cincinnati Reds farm team, the Savannah Redlegs. He got to pitch against Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, all of his heroes as a kid, So it's kind of crazy how life works sometimes, but it never gets lost on me, because at the end of the day, Tara, I'm just as much a fan as I am an artist myself. I still listen to music as a fan. And I still get choked up, or I still get emotional talking or meeting somebody, or even when I talk to Alex Van Halen or whatever, or guys in different bands, the Def Leppard guys, I still sometimes go, yeah, when I was 12 years old, I never thought this would happen. But, of course, it was meant to be for me, that all of this stuff happened, and I made it. I made all this happen. You have to put yourself, and that's another lesson to where, for young artists, bands, whatever you want to do in life as a person, if you want to be successful and you want to achieve something, you have to go out and do it. And it's very simple. What I tell everybody, it's like playing baseball. Get up to the batter's box and take a swing. And try to hit the ball. That's all you can do. The worst thing you could ever do in life is never take a chance, because you'll never get to do anything.
There's so much to talk about with everything on these walls, but I want to make sure that we get into this area of beautiful guitars. There is an Ace guitar here. Steve, point me in the right direction and tell me a little bit about it.
It would be this. This is the 10,000 Volts guitar.
Wow.
And Ace gave this to me. He said, keep this here, because we're going to be making a lot more music together, so I want you to have this. But this is what he used. This is what he used on most of the record. We recorded the most of 10,000 Volts, his guitar parts and his vocals, right where you're standing.
Wow.
Ace would sit, he would sing on that mic, and I'd be there with me and him with headphones, but very special.
Wow. Wow. And I think you said even, the strings are all the same. Everything's the same.
I'll
You're never going
never
to
change these strings.
Wow.
It's got the Ace Mojo. God bless you, brother.
Yeah.
But and these are just my tools. So, being a, guitar player, musician, and I always need, these are guitars that are in different tunings. Here's this is my main recording guitar that I use for, all my new stuff. And it's, of course, my brand, SBS. Don't leave home without it. And, just great stuff. And I try to utilize everything as my bass, Randy Rhoads Jackson guitar, and all these have different sounds. This is one of my this is from back in the Trixter days. That's my trusty Guild guitar. This actually used to be one of Richie Sambora's back in the 80s that I bought off of his guitar repair guy. And I've used this on I use this on everything. And it's one of the best sounding acoustics. Not really in tune right now, but it records great. And and so tools of the trade, some more. Of course, what's the theme in here? A lot of Van Halen stuff. Luckily, I've been an endorser for EVH for 30 years, so I get, they send me amps and pedals, and, I get to use it. Luckily, again, I'm a gearhead, with guitar stuff. A lot of us guitar players, we love gear. Can never get enough. I got to do this. And it's a lot like playing golf, because at the end of the day, like my dad says, he says, if you have a bad swing, the greatest clubs in the world are not going to fix anything. If you're not a good guitar player, no matter what guitar you play or what amp you play, you're still going to suck. But keep playing anyway, because it's still great. But, I love fiddling around, always trying to find different sounds. Yeah!
I love this.
And like when I have to do background vocals, I sit here and this is how I work. Like I'm this, grab a guitar, you know, start playing it up for you, all in one thing, and I go.
So let's talk about this track a little bit. So this is, Steve's working on the new Lorraine Lewis. Lorraine from Femme Fatale. She was in Vixen for a while.
Yep.
So what is it like when you've got artists that you're working with? How do you gain their trust? How do you know their sensibility? Are you a fan going in? You work with a lot of young artists too.
Yes.
Two-part question, so you can answer it in both parts. How do you not break their spirit? You know, you have these young kids coming in. The music business sucks. It's really hard. But how do you keep them inspired? Because you've got to tell them, look, we can do this better. We can do this way. We can do this that way. What is it like for you to work with other people?
Well, the first thing that I do with everybody, I did this with Ace. I did the same thing with Lorraine. I tell them, and it's about trust. I said, if you listen to me and you trust me, there's a reason you called me, because obviously you like what I do. But I said, I promise you, we will make the best music that we could possibly make, and possibly the best music, write the best songs, best produced record that you've made in your life. And that's, you know, because for me, no matter who I work with, I take it, I record and write and make a song like it's my own. So I lose sleep, man. Making the 10,000 volts record, I think, you know, for weeks on end, I slept 2 hours a day. I was so excited to be working with my hero, Ace, and that I'd be like, 3 o'clock in the morning, I go, I run down here and I'm writing new stuff. I mean, that's the excitement.
You were so excited. With a year and a half almost, or a year left to go, you were telling me that you're going to start working with Ace.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is going to be amazing. The ideas we have, the things we're going to work on,
Yeah.
this is going to be incredible. So I knew what your excitement was like with that project. Well, let's circle back to Lorraine too. Is it different working with a female vocalist and getting that sound for a woman?
I don't think so.
Good,
You know,
I'm glad
she
you
has
said
the
that.
same spirit. I mean, she's a rock and roller. She's 66, 67 years old now. She's been around. Lorraine and I and Trixter and Femme Fatale, we were label mates on MCA Records back in the 80s and 90s.
So you've known her all
I've
this
known
time.
her, but not really. I didn't know her, know her back in the day, back in the 80s, if you will. We became friends when she was in Vixen. And so what had happened was right when 10,000 volts was released, I guess she had the inkling that there were some problems with Vixen. I don't really know. You'll interview her, you can ask her. But she called me up and she said, Steve, I want to write with you. I want to work with you. I want my 10,000 volts. She loved the single. She loved Cherry Medicine. And I was like, cool, let's do this. And that's what happened. You know, we started out, we wrote that one song, Living Like There's No Tomorrow. And I told her we got something special here. And she, again, we trust each other. And I let her do her thing. You know, I give her the ideas, a lot like what I did with Ace, would send him, here's half a song. What do you think? And I love this. And same thing with Lorraine. And that's how we go. But it's about making, as a producer and a co-writer, if you will, the artist has to have trust in you that you're going to do right by them. And that's what I said. I look them right in the eye and say, if you trust me, I promise you. And again, whether it's working with somebody like Lorraine or Ace or Kobe Reese, this young, the
You work with
Jersey,
a lot of young talent.
the Jersey's next up and coming big rock and roll star. This kid, I've been working with him since he was like 11 years old now.
And I think the tide is starting to turn now for him because he's getting older.
Yes.
And so now he kind of can feel himself a little better as an artist. Because I
Yeah.
think when you're a kid, you may be, you're outrunning the clock.
course,
You
yeah.
got to wait till the clock catches up a little
Exactly.
bit. So now he's in Europe or Germany. Germany. He's in
Guten Tag. He's in Germany.
Crazy, crazy, crazy. But you've been working with him and you've been kind of a mentor.
Yes.
I think your energy is great to work with these kids. But how is it to not have them, give up? It's very, very difficult to be in the music business.
Yes,
and
it
it's
is.
really difficult for you as an inspirer to inspire. So what has that been like?
I mean, I think, what I tell everybody, if you want to survive in this business, and you know this, you have to love what you do. and that you will do this no matter what, through whatever trials and tribulations. For me, 45 years later, wow, I'm old. Oh my God, help. 45 years later, like I was telling you before, I still wake up every day and I have to come down here to make music, play music, create. I still practice my guitar every day. I still sing every day. I practice and I love it. None of it is work to me. I remember back in the 80s, David Lee Roth saying, when you do this, you're in this business, when you love what you do, it's not work. We don't work music. You play music, and that's a beauty. Even though, yes, it is work at times, and I'm a big, the Jersey thing, the Jersey work ethic.
Yeah.
We learned it from the Bon Jovis. John, was our big inspiration.
The working man, the working woman.
Yeah, that's right.
You know
whether it's Sayreville, New Jersey, or Paramus, New Jersey, or wherever you're from in Jersey, there's a work ethic here, and I honestly, truly believe that that has played into it, but it's that love of rock and roll and all things about rock and roll. Doing interviews, because you can tell I kind of like the sound of my voice, right? I love talking, but that's what you have to do, and you have to see it. And I try to tell everybody, I said, it's not just about, first off, it's not a talent contest. We all know that. It's about the people who work the hardest. You have to have other things. Of course, there are intangibles that come in. But making music, you have to have an image. I tell everybody, always stay in shape. Be the best you can be, no matter what it is. And that's the key. So, but the key of it all, what I tell everybody, first and foremost, you have to love to do this, and you will make music no matter what anybody says, no matter what happens, that you will do it. And that's how I believe you'll be successful. And success is different than it was, let's say, years ago, because if you're making music and you're a band and you continue to do it, whether it's making millions of dollars or becoming the so-called rock star, for some people, that's not, I don't look at that as success.
Well, that's what I think has always been the beauty about you, though. And I have to interrupt you because you have always been able to be, I think, what a working musician is defined as.
Sure.
So what you did is you were in this box. People thought of you as the singing guitar player from Trixter. And then you opened up multiple boxes around you. Yeah. Writing and producing and mentoring and doing all of the things and touring with different bands. You've had a bunch of different bands that you've toured with over the years, that you've been a part of over the years. So you and PJ are the definitions of working musicians. And I think that that's what it's all about. When you want to make music, you just make music. PJ has been in Ra, and he is now with Fozzy, and Chris Jericho can't say enough great things about PJ. PJ is a great player and an awesome person. Yes. And you guys have managed to be on the path of being working musicians forever. And I think that that is part of the magic. That's part of really what you do. And that's what often gets lost in the stories. Because we'll tell stories about, when you launched your career and the artists that you've been influenced by and have impacted. But I also think the working musician in you is a big part and a big piece of the reinvention that I spoke about in the beginning. And speaking of that reinvention, we're getting new Trixter music.
Yeah, well, it's a never, a Trixter is always, I'm always making and always writing music. I have a whole new record written. PJ
always
and I have
evolving.
Been yeah, always evolving. Well, again, that's the beauty, having your own studio at any hour. I get inspired. I can come down here, write a song, record it, and that's how it works.
So in between the busy schedules for you and PJ, you guys have been putting new music together.
Yes.
So when can we expect new music? Are we getting it in songs? Are we getting it in a full-length sequenced album? Or are we getting it, how are we getting it?
That's a good question. How are we getting it?
We don't know yet.
Yeah. Well, I think I've spoken about this, that we've been working with our childhood friend Alex Castino, who you know from who did the Wolfgang
I
music.
love Alex.
So we're putting together a documentary about PJ and I. Yes.
Really?
Yep. but it's not a Trixter documentary. It's the story, just what you were saying about me and PJ being musicians, about our journeys together in Trixter and separately as musicians. But the core of the story is that we always come back home to each other and be, PJ and I have been playing together for almost 38 years now, which is, again, the age thing. Thank God for hair dye. Remember that, kids. As you get older, that's another thing.
Wow.
But long story short, so we're working on that. So with the new album, which is written, I have everything. I have 15 songs done. It's probably not going to be 15 songs on the record, but there's always an overabundance of material. The plan is that we're going to have the documentary and the new record come out at the same time, be like a companion to each other.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, we're really excited. But the problem is, I get hired to work with other people, and it's kind of like I gotta make the donuts, if you will. And so always working on other things.
We have to keep the log cabin where the studio exists intact.
We gotta keep the lights on. Who do you think's paying for this?
Right. And PJ's he's with Fozzy.
And he's with Fozzy. He's got Quarantine, that Kiss cover band. And again, we both have so many different things. And then throw into the mix that last year Trixter did 56 shows. And this year we're on target. We're doing over 60 this year.
Yeah.
So it's hard, and again, a lot of bands will tell the same story. Listen, there aren't enough hours in the day, and it's not like it was in the 80s or 90s where we would go and have 8 weeks and we would live together and make a record and it would be done. That doesn't exist nowadays. We do everything a lot is remote recording, which is great. This whole Lorraine Lewis Femme Fatale record, most of the people that are playing on it, everything's done remotely. And that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. People all around the world, I need drum tracks. Hey, do drums for me. Send it to me on Dropbox. That's how we work. So, but we're really excited. I'm going to play some of the new music, and I think you're going to be. I think everybody's going to be
getting a taste.
Blown away.
Let's get a little taste. Can we get a taste?
Sure.
Feeling cold as stone, chasing shadows, feeling far from home, feeling low with a light, thought I'd never survive, now I'm standing on top, feeling so alive, storm clouds rolling, trying to drown me out, I see myself alive, now I know what love's about.
Air guitar, so important. Right?
So this is new Trixter.
It is.
Awesome. What a big, chunky, melodic, light, elevating hook there.
Yeah.
Very, very super cool. So is this going to be the first tune we get? I think we're getting a tune before this tune, correct?
Yeah, tribute. Yeah, we're on a really cool tribute record that's coming out in the next couple months on Cleopatra Records for a 70s, 80s soft rock band. And it's going to be the first new Trixter song with me as lead vocalist. PJ played bass and drums. I did all the guitars. Bruno Ravel from Danger Danger's mixing it right now. He mixed 10,000 volts. He's my sonic guru engineer who mixes everything. But so yeah, and then this one. Listen to this guitar solo. That was probably done at 5:30 in the morning.
Trixter.
Yeah. Shh. You're not supposed to.
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anybody. Oh wait, we're on the Carr Stereo Podcast.
Yeah, little bit of a debut on the Carr Stereo Podcast.
But so hopefully soon. But I think this song is going to be the first single.
Can I lean on the Kiss machine, by the way?
Of course you can. This has been around since 1978. It can take a beating.
I love this.
Just don't make it tilt.
I love it. I cannot thank you enough for letting us hang out in your home. This is like your home, and you let us come in and kind of move in here for today. You can always count on my Jersey family too, so thank you so much.
That's right. Well, we're going to have meatballs and pasta after, it's a Jersey thing. We eat after we do rock and roll interviews, right?
We're going upstairs.
That's it. You're always welcome.
Thank you,
know
my
that.
love.
Your
I love
family.
you.
My first New Jersey rock and roll interview back in 1990.
Yep, one of my
TC.
first interviews as well.
Trixter, back to the
Trixter
old
guys.
station. Great time. So thanks for
Beautiful.
having me, and whatever you need, I'm always here for you.